Hello and welcome back to another ProGuides Teamfight Tactics video. In case you missed our champion tier list, I highly advise you check it out before watching this video. If you did watch it, that means you probably know which champions are particularly strong. However, you also probably learned that those champions aren't strong enough to win a game on their own. That's why today we're bringing you the Teamfight Tactics Synergy tier list. But first, I'd like to remind you guys to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about Teamfight Tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you guys be the best player that you can be. So be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Alright, now let's get back into the video. Like I said earlier, we're going to be ranking every synergy into a tier list. Additionally, we're going to be breaking down each synergy's strengths and weaknesses and offer some tips for other synergies that they work well with. As usual, this will just be a guide to help you guys make decisions in game and does not necessarily mean that a higher ranked synergy will always beat a lower ranked synergy. There are always multiple factors in a game, such as positioning and items. So with that out of the way, let's hop right into the tier list. Nobles have always been the premier early game comp. Most of the time, Nobles are what you're looking for in early stage 2. With Void being the dominant synergy in 9.15, Nobles never really had a chance to shine. However, with their nerf in 9.16, Nobles have quickly proven to be such a threat that they received a hotfix only 2 days later. They can definitely dominate in games where there's no Void or Sorcerers. Strengths. The Noble buff is extremely strong in the early game. Even your damage dealers are tanky in the late game. Weaknesses. 1. Completing the synergy relies on getting a 5-cost unit Kale. 2. The synergy falls off hard in the mid game until you find Kale. Synergies to build with. 1. Knights. With the Noble buff giving 70 armor and magic resist, and there already being 2 Knights and Nobles, it's easy to pair them. The damage block from the Knights also applies after the armor and magic resist from Nobles, meaning it's possible to completely block incoming damage to your champions. 2. Gunslingers / Blade Masters. One of the few things Nobles lack is damage. Since the start of 9.16, one of the best and most popular ways to add damage was by adding Gunslingers or Blade Masters, like Gangplank and Draven or Jinx as a hypercarry. Next, we have Voids. Voids have quickly risen from almost useless to the top of the meta with the help of patch 9.15. Since then, they've always had a place in countering many other popular synergies, including the new dominant synergy, Nobles. With Cho'Gath as a massive AoE true damage dealer, Voids offers very little counterplay. Strengths. Many of the Voids are 1 or 2 cost, meaning you'll be able to find them pretty easily. 2. The buff turns Void damage into true damage. This effectively negates Noble, Guardian, and Knight buffs. 3. Only requires 3 units to go active. This makes Voids easy to splash into comps. Weaknesses. 1. Most units other than Cho'Gath are relatively weak on their own. Synergies to build with. 1. Sorcerers. Sorcerers are already a strong synergy on their own. However, the additional AP they provide really let Cho'Gath shine. If you're able to get a Yuumi for Cho'Gath and other AP items with 2 other sorcerers, he'll rapidly fire off huge ults and can often one-shot entire teams on his own. 2. Brawlers. Brawler is another synergy that's really strong on its own. It's a really good combination with Voids because 2 out of the 4 Voids are already Brawlers, meaning you'll only need to pick up 2 more Brawlers for the full plus 700 health on each Brawler. This adds more survivability to Rek'Sai and Cho'Gath, allowing them to do more true damage, which Brawlers would otherwise lack. Overall, Voids and Brawlers complement each other nicely. Sorcerers. Sorcerers have always been a top-tier synergy. Their passive ability to gain extra mana while attacking and their AP multiplying allow them to rapid fire off high-damage spells, giving them one of the highest damage outputs of all the synergies. Strengths. 1. Tons of damage. With the buff, Karthus or Aurelion can deal massive AoE damage and can almost solo teams on their own. 2. They are one of the few synergies that provide a global buff, powering up not only themselves, but also the entire team. 3. Even at only 3 sorcerers, your team gets a 40% AP buff, making it worth it just splashing them. Weaknesses. 1. Sorcerers by themselves are really squishy. 2. Sorcerers can be pretty item dependent. They typically rely on more AP and mana items to ult faster and more frequently. 3. A lot of sorcerers are pretty weak on their own. Synergies to build with. 1. Brawlers. We already covered this, but again, sorcerers provide more damage, especially with Cho'Gath, which is one of the best combos in the meta right now, while Brawlers provide the frontline that squishy sorcerers desperately need. 2. Yordles. This is another common combination, as Lulu and Veigar are already Yordles and only require one more Yordle to activate the 3 Yordle buff and one more Sorcerer to activate the Sorcerer for a small splashable core. A good third Yordle would typically be Kennen, as he already deals high AoE damage along with CC, which only gets better with the AP buff. Brawlers. As you may have guessed from its mentions in the other 2 S-tier synergies so far, Brawlers are the next S-tier synergy. They are an easily splashable tanky frontline for every other synergy that are also capable of dealing damage back. Strengths. 1. All the units have relatively high base health for their cost, even before the buff. 2. They can function pretty well even without items. Outside of Volibear, most Brawlers can serve their purpose without a single item. 3. All the units are pretty good on their own, especially Blitzcrank and Cho'Gath. Weaknesses. 1. Without any other synergies, Brawlers don't really have any damage for themselves. Synergies to build with. 1. Sorcerers. Sorcerers give Brawlers more of the damage they need and make Cho'Gath even stronger. 2. Voids. With 2 Brawlers already being Voids, this is an easy combination, only requiring a Kassadin or Kha'Zix, which are both really easy to find, being 1 costs. This also gives Brawlers much needed damage in the form of Cho'Gath. Robot. Robot is a weird case. We'll put it in S tier because it's basically an extension of Brawler, with it being a unique trait to Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank allows you to pick off corner carries or forces those players to position less optimally though, without real counterplay. Other than that, it doesn't exactly have any strengths or weaknesses of its own, but basically shares with Brawlers. A tier. Demon. Demons are a strong synergy that relies on denying the opponent's mana, which often results in cutting their damage significantly. They also turn this mana burn mana for themselves, allowing them to cast their abilities faster. Strengths. 1. Many of the units are pretty strong on their own, making it really easy to transition into this synergy. 2. Their mana burn is very effective against a lot of the main top synergies or champs in the meta, Sorcerer, Cho, etc., in slowing them from casting their huge ults. 3. The change in 9.16 makes it better to run a champion like Swain, as he'll get to ult way faster. Weaknesses. 1. With the change in 9.16, they now only steal 20 mana instead of burning all the target's mana, making them a less effective counter to strats like Sorcerers like they used to be. Synergies to build with. 1. Rangers. Varus is one of the better units from both Demons and Rangers. By combining with Rangers, you give Varus a chance to increase his attack speed, which increases his DPS and makes it more likely for him to mana burn his target. 2. Elementalist. Brand is another high DPS dealer in Demons, and he also has the Elementalist tag, making it easier to go Elementalist by only requiring 2 more Elementalists. Like any other comp running Elementalists, Demons could benefit from the front line that Daisy can provide, and the additional damage from Kennen or utility of Anivia. Elementalist. Elementalist has been a useful synergy that have seen many nerfs since the game's release. Despite all these nerfs, Elementalists remain a high-tier synergy because the front line they provide is always useful, and they are so easy to include in many comps. Strengths. 1. Most of the units are decent or good damage dealers on their own, with some like Kennen or Anivia being worth running outside of this synergy. 2. Daisy is an extra unit, and with proper positioning will allow you to use it as a decoy to pull focus away from your damage dealers. Weaknesses. 1. All of the better Elementalists are higher cost champs, making this one of the harder synergies to get. Synergies to build with. 1. Glacial. 2 of the 4 Elementalists are Glacials, so an Elementalist package easily fits into a Glacial comp. 2. Rangers. Elementalist brings a solid frontline to an otherwise squishy Ranger comp. It also adds more CC with Kennen and Anivia, and provides another Glacial and Demon for Ashe and Varus. Glacial. Glacials are another comp that have always floated around the high tiers. Their stun chance has always been a somewhat reliable way to shut down opposing strategies. Strengths. 1. Built-in CC for every Glacial unit. Weaknesses. 1. There's not exactly a ton of damage in Glacials, and you're kind of relying on the stuns to go off. 2. Rangers. Pairing with Glacials and Rangers allows Ashe to get more attack speed for a higher chance to stun, and adds more damage to the comp as a whole. 2. Elementalist. If you're going full Glacials, you'll likely already have Lissandra and Anivia, meaning you'll only need to pick up Brand or Kennen to get the Elementalist buff, and it strengthens your front line. Hextech. Hextechs are the first synergy to be added into the game after release. They rely on an anti-fun strategy of shutting down opponents' items. They are the perfect answer to strategies that rely on building 3 full items on a carry and protecting them in a corner where you couldn't reach them. Strengths. 1. We finally have an answer to item stackers. You can force that RFC Draven out of the corner, melt a champ with GA before it gets a chance to revive, turn off spatula synergies, etc. 2. It only takes 2 champs to shut off items, which makes this synergy very easy to fit into a comp. 3. Many of the champs are cheap, so it's easy to swap them in late game if you find yourself against a very item-reliant team. Weaknesses. 1. Camille and Jace are very weak by themselves and offer very little to a team. 2. Hextechs aren't really a synergy that meld very well with other synergies. Instead, they're only there for utility instead of complementing anything else. 3. They're not very consistent and are pretty easy to counterplay. The way Hextechs work is they randomly select a champion with items at the start and negate its items along with the items of any adjacent champion. You're not guaranteed to hit the target you want to hit, and opponents can spread out their champions with items in order to avoid having all their items shut off. Synergies to build with. As mentioned earlier, Hextechs don't really have anything to offer other than synergies, and are probably just being splashed into whatever synergy you're already building, i.e. Jinx and Vi in Gunslingers or Brawlers, Camille and Jinx in Blademasters, etc. Ranger. Ranger is another synergy that just isn't quite what it used to be. It can still be worth going for if you find the items early enough, but you definitely don't want to force it. Strengths. 1. Their increased attack speed means they can make good use of on-hit items and items like Shiv. Weaknesses. 1. Rangers are another heavily item-dependent synergy. They'll typically want a lot of Shivs. 2. The Rangers are very squishy by themselves. Synergies to build with. 1. Elementalist. Elementalists add a frontline to Rangers while also adding to some of the Rangers' other synergies, like Brand for Varus' damage, or Anivia or Lissandra for Ashe's Glacial. 2. Knights. Knights serve a similar purpose for Rangers as Elementalists do. Many Knights share Rangers' other synergies, like Sejuani for Ashe or Mordekaiser for Kindred. They also reduce the damage Rangers take, allowing them to DPS longer. Exile. Exile is another weird case. Like Robot with Blitzcrank, Exile is a trait unique to Yasuo. However, instead of playing it more as an extension of Blademasters, it actually makes Yasuo much better than the rest of the Blademasters, except maybe Draven. It gives him an additional 100% of his max HP, making him tankier than the rest of the Blademasters, and makes him worth running without the Blademaster synergy. B tier. Dragon. Dragons aren't quite what they used to be. Their complete magic immunity is only magic resistance now, and even with their magic resistance, they just can't protect themselves from the voids. Strengths. 1. Built-in Dragon's Claw, making Dragon an extremely good pick against Sorcerer comps. Weaknesses. 1. Limited to 2 champs that otherwise have no synergy together. Synergies to build with. 1. Sorcerers. If you're building dragons, you're going to want either Aurelion or Shyvana to be your carry. If you're going for Aurelion carry, you'll definitely want to pick up the Sorcerer buff to increase the damage output. 2. Shapeshifters. If you're going for Shyvana carry, you'll want Shapeshifters for the bonus health to make your Shyvana much tankier. Guardian. Guardians have received some pretty big buffs recently. In another meta, they can definitely shine as physical tanks, but unfortunately, magic resist is the more important stat right now, and Guardians just don't offer that. Strengths. 1. The champs in the synergy are the 2 tankiest solo champs in the game. 2. Only takes 2 champions for the full synergy, so it's very easy to splash into any comp. Weaknesses. 1. This synergy is a little weak in this Void and Sorcerer meta. Synergies to build with. 1. Glacial. Braum is already a strong frontline for Glacials and will probably be included anyway. Including Leona just makes him even stronger along with the rest of the frontline. Gunslinger. Gunslingers have always been a really good early game comp, relying on picking up a bunch of cheap champs. However, they've always suffered from the problem of falling off towards the endgame. Strengths. 1. Uses on-hit items like Hush, Red Buff, etc. better than any other synergy. 2. All the champs are pretty cheap, meaning it's very easy to get early and very easy to get the champs 3-star. 3. Extremely strong in the early game. Weaknesses. 1. This synergy is very item dependent. 2. Will likely fall off towards the endgame. Synergies to build with. 1. Blademaster. With Gangplank being a Blademaster, he can start your transition into them. Many of the recurve bows you want for gunslingers early on also work well for Draven. 2. Pirates. This isn't exactly a synergy to build with, since they're basically included in gunslingers, but the extra gold helps with the extra rerolls you want for gunslingers. Knight. Knights are definitely much better than they used to be, but like many other synergies, so far this is just not the meta for them. They still have a use in the early game, but become less relevant soon after. Strengths. 1. Very easy to find in the early game when they're most effective. 2. This synergy is another global buff, so they're not only a good frontline, but they also help keep the damage dealers alive longer. Weaknesses. 1. Knights don't really have any damage for themselves. 2. In the later game, when champs are doing way more damage, the damage reduction Knights offer becomes less significant. 3. This is another synergy that is useless against the Voids. Synergies to build with. 1. Rangers. Knights are a good synergy to combine with Rangers because they provide a front line to keep the damage-dealing Rangers safe. Including the right Knights also gives a second champ for certain Ranger synergies, like Sejuani for Ashe's Glacial and Mordekaiser for Kindred's Phantom. Phantom is an extremely powerful synergy as an idea. It can be really good if it's paired with a synergy or items that allow you to pick off the target easily, but it can be really bad if it hits a target that avoids focus. Basically, the RNG involved makes this much weaker. Strengths. 1. Allows you to take out a unit instantly, whether it's their main DPS or their unkillable front line. Weaknesses. 1. Target is chosen completely at random. 2. Two of the 3 champs in this synergy are 4 and 5 costs, meaning you won't be getting it until late game, and the other champ is the worst one in the game. Synergies to build with. 1. Rangers. Rangers tend to build shivs, which allow them to take out a phantom target, even if it's in the back line. It also helps that one of the better phantoms is a ranger. 2. Sorcerers. Similar to Rangers, Sorcerers tend to have a lot of AoE spells that allow them to take advantage of the Phantom buff by hitting all champs, even the ones in the backline. Shapeshifter. Shapeshifters are another bonus synergy where they don't really do anything for themselves, but it's an extra synergy if you're already picking up a few for another synergy anyway. Strengths. 1. After the champs transform, they get extra tanky with this synergy. Weaknesses. 1. Shapeshifters don't really do anything by themselves. Synergies to build with. 1. Demon. The Shapeshifter synergy is more of a bonus, and you'll rarely want to build just for Shapeshifters. Usually Demon will be a good synergy to build with since they have Elise and Swain, who are both Shapeshifters already. 2. Wild. Shapeshifters work well with Wild for the same reason they work well with Demons. Wild already has Nicolai and Gnar, so adding another Shapeshifter just gives them all bonus health. Wild. Wild has gotten another buff this patch, but it just requires too many champ slots on a comp for champions that don't really have any other synergy with each other for the full buff. However, this does make their early game stronger. Strengths. 1. Global buff at 4 Wilds. 2. Nicolai and Warwick are a couple of cheap champs to buy early on that make great use of this synergy in the early game. Weaknesses. 1. Going for the full buff takes a lot of commitment to champs who don't really have any other synergy with each other. Synergies to build with. 1. Shapeshifters. Nicolai and Gnar are already 2 Shapeshifters. All you need to add is 1 more Shapeshifter. If you have the full Wild buff, you can add a Shyvana for the most DPS with her transformed autos. 2. Sorcerers. Sorcerers gain double mana on attack, so Sorcerers can greatly benefit from an increased attack speed, allowing them to gain mana much faster and rapid fire off spells. Yordle. Yordles always have been that comp that everyone hates to play against. Unless you have the right comp or items to counter them, you're going to have a hard time. Not exactly great against the current meta, but definitely a good choice if you find your lobby is full of gunslingers, rangers, or any other on-hit synergies. Strengths. 1. Many of the Yordles are great champs on their own, and are pretty cheap, making them easy to splash. 2. Yordles can act as their own front line by dodging enemy attacks while also being their own DPS dealers. Weaknesses. 1. Rapid Fire Cannon is one of the most popular items in the meta right now, which is the perfect counter to this synergy. 2. Kennen, Cho'Gath, and Karthus are some of the most popular champs in the meta right now, and all of them have AoE spells that can't miss Yordles. Synergies to build with. 1. Sorcerers. As we talked about earlier, 2 of the Yordles, Vhagar and Lulu, are already Sorcerers, making it very easy to pick up a few more Sorcerers to complete the Sorcerer synergy. With the Yordle buff, they act as a different kind of frontline, by dodging the opponent's hits and surviving long enough so that your Sorcerers can do their DPS. C tier. Assassins. Ever since 9.15, Assassins just haven't been as strong as they used to be. With the new pathing and jump time, it's much harder for them to do their job of assassinating the back line. Between that and their lower damage output, they just aren't as dominant as they used to be. Strengths. 1. Assassins are a great synergy for taking down stacked backline carries. 2. One of the highest damage outputs of all the synergies. Weaknesses. 1. Assassins are usually pretty squishy. 2. If they can't end a fight really quickly, they won't last very long on their own. 3. Especially after the rework to their pathing, it's gotten a lot easier to position around Assassins. Synergies to build with. 1. Voids. Assassins still do a good job of supporting Kha'Zix in Voids, while Voids provide some tanky champs like Rek'Sai and Cho'Gath to distract the opponent's team while the rest of your Assassins DPS. 2. Ninjas. Ninjas are a synergy that already include 2 Assassins, with Akali being one of the best Assassins anyway. Ninjas and Assassins do a good job of complementing each other by buffing each other's damage output, while Shen and Kennen provide something tanky and some CC. BladeMaster. Strengths. 1. The additional quick attacks allow for fast shiv procs. Weaknesses. 1. Most of their in-synergy damage comes from Draven or Yasuo, who usually don't show up until later in the game. Synergies to build with. 1. Gunslinger. Gunslingers are a really good early game comp, and with Gangplank, they can start a transition into Blademasters. Because Blademasters have the chance for additional attacks, they also benefit from the on-hit items that Gunslingers would normally run. Imperial. Imperial has always been one of the late-game fantasy comps that seems incredibly strong when you can get all 4 champs. However, it often ends up being used exclusively for buffing a Draven's damage. Strengths. 1. Getting this buff is usually important to Draven carry comps. 2. The full buff allows for many champs in your comp to carry. Weaknesses. 1. Imperials are another synergy that rely on getting a 5 cost in order to complete the synergy. 2. Two of the champions in the synergy are really bad and often not worth picking up. 3. Unless you're going 4 Imperials, the buff falls on a random Imperial, making it inconsistent that you get it on Draven. Synergies to build with. 1. Blademaster. Most of the time, if you're going for Imperial, you want Draven to be your carry. By pairing them with Blademasters, you further buff Draven's DPS. Ninja. Strengths. 1. The 1 Ninja buff is really good early on, especially for champs like Shen and Kennen, and even mid to late game for Akali. Weaknesses. 1. The 4 Ninja buff is really weak right now for what it requires. Synergies to build with. 1. Assassins. Half of the ninjas are already assassins. With their buff increasing their AD and AP, pairing them with assassins stays on theme of increasing their damage output and allows Akali to go into hypercarry mode. 2. Elementalist. With Kennen already being 1 Elementalist, it's easy to fit in 2 other Elementalists to complete the synergy. Elementalists provide more of a frontline, allowing your buffed ninjas to DPS while the opponent focuses on Daisy. D tier. Pirate. In a game where your main goal at all stages of the game should be to minimize the impact of RNG, pirates just don't fit that goal. While it is good when you hit the extra gold, you're relying on that chance while receiving nothing else to make your comp work better. Strengths. 1. If you manage to get enough gold off the synergy, you can possibly snowball. 2. Late game, this is just an added bonus in Gunslingers. Weaknesses. 1. The synergy offers no additional combat stats at all. While you're dedicating slots to champs to get this synergy, you'll likely lose to teams with better synergies. 2. It's another completely random synergy with an expected value of less than 2 extra gold per round. It's entirely possible that you go multiple rounds in a row, receiving no gold at all. Synergies to build with. 1. Gunslingers. Again, this isn't exactly a synergy to build with, since they're basically included in Gunslingers, but the extra gold helps with the extra rerolls you want for Gunslingers in the early game. Late game, it's just an added bonus if you have Graves, Gangplank, and Misfortune. And with that, we've just gone over every synergy in TFT. Which of these is your favorite synergies? Which synergies do you think should have placed higher or lower on the list? Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit ProGuides.com to stay up to date on Teamfight Tactics. Good luck in your games, and we'll see you all next time.